If we can have the first screen. So as I said, over the next 9 weeks, going to be talking about metta. And there you go, nice big red metta, sorted. So we need to put this in context. So going back to first principles, we have the next screen. We'll find that, that's gone too far. There we go. The teaching of the Buddha was, the fundamental one, was conditionality. And as Ashiji said to Shariputra when they first met, regarding dharmas that arise from a cause, the Tathagata taught their cause and also their cessation. So these were the words of the mendicant or the Buddha. So as a bit of a recap, hopefully, we can look at 5 different levels of conditionality. So I'll have the next slide. So these are called the niyamas. So we have the inorganic, the world of physics, the organic, the world of biology, mental non-volitional, which I suppose is more to do with how we function as animals, the karmic level, and the dharmic level. And in terms of the system of practice we explore on our Thursday night, they kind of relate to the inorganic, organic, and mental. Non-volitional relate to the stage of integration. The karmic relates to the stage of positive emotion, and the dharmic relates to spiritual death, rebirth, and receptivity. There is an element that all the stages have different aspects of all the other ones, but we're keeping it simple. So we've got these meditations. So in terms of the stage of integration, we've got the mindfulness of breathing. In terms of positive emotion, we have the Mettā Bhavana, which can be focusing on. And in terms of the Dharma Niyama, we have things like the 6 element practice, visualization practice, and just sitting. And we can see within conditionality, there's 2 trends. There's a cyclical, which I seem to have missed a C off, and a progressive. So the cyclical is much more to do with the wheel of life, and progressive, the spiral path. Okay. And that will do for the slides for the moment. I'm going to read a, no slides at this point, there we go. Something from Subhuti, who talks about the stage of positive emotion. He says it works especially with the karma niyama. This means trying to be ethical so that one's actions, guided by the precepts, are more and more helpful to oneself and to others. It also means addressing underlying motivations by deliberately cultivating helpful intentions, skillful mental states through the practice of meditation. Included also is genuine communication and friendship, especially in the context of Sangha. These efforts of Sila and Samadhi will gradually bear fruit under the law of karma. One will experience deeper and richer states of consciousness emerging, not merely at the time of meditation. One will have a more abiding sense of satisfaction and self-confidence. One will feel a deeper harmony with others and a stronger sympathy. One will have a more subtle aesthetic sensibility. One will dwell more frequently in dhyana. So in a way, that's all to do with the stage of positive emotion. The way I sometimes think about it, when we first start off, we learn the mindfulness of breathing and the Mettā Bhavana. And poetically, we can think of, if you like, the mindfulness of breathing starts to reveal what it means for us to be human, different aspects of ourselves. And the Mettā Bhavana, and the stage of positive emotion, is about working out what it means being human in relationship to the world. So let's have a look at metta in a bit more detail. So I'll have another slide. So we have a quote from the Metta Sutta here, as just as a mother who has an only son would protect her own son with her life, So one should cultivate a boundless mind towards all living beings. So this is a translation from Analeo. This is quite interesting because sometimes we hear metta described as the love a mother has for her only child, towards all beings. But the sutta actually seems to say something different. The sutta much more emphasizes protecting the child. Another translation is much more to do with bringing safety to the child. And in a way, so it's a slightly different feel. It's not this kind of, it's not about love that a parent would feel towards their child. It's something different. It's that wish to protect, and it's a wish to protect all beings. Another aspect of metta that we find in the Pali Canon. Move on. You can have the next slide. Is from the Middle Length Discourses, Sutta 104, where the Buddha lists 6 warm-hearted qualities of fondness and respect. Sometimes it's translated as 6 warm-hearted qualities for caudality. But I think sometimes caudality has a slightly formal feel about it. So I kind of like fondness and respect. So these 6 are bodily acts of loving kindness, verbal acts of loving kindness, mental acts of loving kindness. One shares one's gains, or I guess whether that's kind of physical or maybe spiritual. One maintains ethical conduct, and also one upholds the views which lead to liberation. So if we can practice these 6 qualities, we can develop a fondness, a respect, a caudality towards everyone in our lives. I think there's a question arises if you just read this quote and the quote before, and that is metta an emotion? The answer on a certain level, of course, is. We're talking about the stage of practice of positive emotion. So quite clearly it is. But is it that straightforward? So if we look at the next slide, we're just seeing that metta is described as a mental act, an act of protection. It's described as a boundless mind, or a couple of translations from the Metta Sutta, cultivate an all-embracing mind of love, or Sankaracharya in one of his seminars describes a boundless heart or a limitless mind. So though we think of metta as emotion, a lot of the descriptions of it describe mind. So I think this is quite interesting. So the word that comes up in the sutta, in the Metta Sutta, is manasam, which translates as mind or intention. So it's probably more accurate to think of metta as a volition, as an act of will, almost as a wishing. So it can be emotional, but sometimes maybe not necessarily in the way that we think it is. It's also interesting in Buddhism, the word volition is a translation of samskara or sankhara, depending on your Sanskrit and Pali, which is one of the skandhas, one of the 5 heaps that makes up psychophysical experience. And we also find samskara on the outside of the wheel of life as our karma formations. So this ties back a little bit with what Subhuti was talking about in terms of our positive emotion is creating positive karma. So they're just a few, if you like, random thoughts about metta. You've all done the metta, you've all have some experience of the Mettā Bhavana. So it's just to kind of get us to think a little bit more deeply of what's going on. So let's just have a little bit more of a look at Mettā Bhavana. So Mettā Bhavana, the development of loving kindness. And as we saw in the list from the Pali Canon, we cultivate metta in body, speech, and mind. Bhavana doesn't really translate specifically as meditation. It just is the development of. We obviously do the meditation that we call the Mettā Bhavana to help us with that, but we need to be looking at cultivating metta, loving kindness in body, speech, and mind. And how do we do this? Well, according to Buddhaghosa, who was, I suppose, the authority, if you like, almost, in terms of the Pali Canon. He lived in about the 6th century in Sri Lanka. He described 2 ways that we repeatedly think or say, may I be happy and free from suffering, or may I keep myself free from enmity, affliction, and anxiety, and live happily. So this seems to be the way it's traditionally done. So I'm going to say a bit more about that. But the way I think about the actual formal practice on the cushions of Mettā Bhavana is the meditation is a rehearsal for everyday life. Okay, I'm going to let that slide go now. Okay, just lose the slide. Thank you. So the metta was a very old practice. It was taught by the Buddha. We have some idea of some of that by the Metta Sutta. And I think it stood the time of 2,500 years of practice. So I think we can have faith, we can have confidence that it works. So that's one of the things. There's also something about the order of the stages. And traditionally it was done in 6 stages. We had loving kindness towards ourselves, then our spiritual teacher, good friend, neutral person, difficult person, and equalizing that to all sentient beings. I've heard recently some people were suggesting maybe changing the stages round a bit. So if you didn't feel something in the first stage, you could do the second stage first and vice versa. And I'm not quite sure about that. It's almost saying that you have to be having a particular experience of developing metta. You have to have a feeling. And I'm not really sure that's always the case. It may be that you have a feeling of metta, of loving kindness. There may be a real warmth in the heart, maybe radiating metta out into the world. But maybe there's not. And in a way, that's absolutely okay. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. So, as I said, we can think of metta as much more as a volition, directionality of mind or heart. And that's not necessarily a feeling. It may be, but it may not be. So that's just a thought that if we say, oh, you're not feeling something, then you're telling someone actually you're not doing the practice right. I'm not sure how useful that is. So I would have faith in the practice. It works in the way that has come down through our tradition. One of the ways it's come down through our tradition is, as Buddhaghosa says, you repeat phrases. And I think this is quite interesting. I suppose over the years I've been practicing the Mettā Bhavana, I learned doing phrases. I'd go, may I be well, may I be happy, may I be free from suffering, and may I progress. And I don't think I actually felt any metta for probably 18 months of doing that every other day. I don't think that's a problem. But what I had noticed even within a couple of months of just kind of quite rhythmically, almost with the breath, may I be well, may I be happy, may I be free from suffering, may I progress, my relationships with people around me changed. When I first started meditating, I used to work in a shop, and the manager and I, the supervisor, did not get on. We were very, very different people, shall we say. And pretty much daily, every other day, we would have arguments and a bit of a shouting match. And I noticed within a couple of months of doing the Mettā Bhavana, um, they'd stopped because I'd stopped arguing. Still hadn't felt anything, but that volition of just going, may I be well, may I be happy, may they be well, may the supervisor be well, may she be happy. It worked. It's kind of alchemy in a certain way. So it's interesting. And then I moved away from doing phrases, and I kind of worked on how I felt in my heart center and so on. And in more recent time, I actually find I just go back to the phrases. So, you know, it's one of those things. I think we all have a journey with the Mettā Bhavana. So it's much more about developing metta, and the test of that is, does it affect our everyday life? You know, it may be that you're just kind of repeating, may I be well, may I be happy. And then it suddenly occurs to you that actually a particular one of my behaviors causes me suffering. That thought arises, and we may change our behavior. We may not have felt anything, but that is an example of metta. We may be in the fourth stage, may they be well, may they be happy, being really quite grumpy. And a thought occurs to you, maybe I play a certain part in the interaction with this person. And you start to change your interaction with this person. Again, that is really metta. It may or may not have a wonderful, loving feeling. So our test of our practice is whether it has an effect in the world. And if it is, great. And if not, hopefully over the next couple of months, we've got some ideas of how we can do that, and we can change our practice to make it more effective. So I think that's all I've got to say. It's just a few random, probably ramblings about metta. So I'm now going to hand over to tonight's guest meditation leader, which is Jnana Mitra, who some of you will know. I'm very, very pleased that Jnana Mitra is joining us tonight. Her brief is to lead the Mettā Bhavana however she wishes. So it could be quite different. But personally, I'm really quite excited. I think a lot of the stuff I'm going to cover on this course, I learned from Jnana Mitra over 20 years ago. So